Thank you, Jeff. And I am also delighted that one of my fellow panel members just joined us. And I know she's incredibly busy, but the AU Commissioner for Rural Development, Rhoda Peace-Tumasime, has just joined us in the front row. So thanks, Rhoda, for taking the time from your agenda to join us. Before, when I was in this room, it was jam-packed, and there were people leaning against the walls. But this is okay, because I can look across the audience and see that this is a dedicated group of people, but also a group of people who are very, very knowledgeable and concerned with the kinds of issues that we're going to be addressing in this session. As Jeff just said, we've decided as a panel to take a very broad view of nutrition, but presented the opportunity to participate in this conference on resilience. We really felt that it was an opportunity to look at the how as well as the what of moving toward a better nourished world. To improve nutrition for all, obviously we need to make changes in the way that we produce food. And that, of course, is very much the center of the agriculture agenda. But as Jeff also just mentioned, we really have focused in on the processing, transporting, marketing, and then leading up to how consumers make the choices from that food supply that is available and accessible to them. So we are hoping as a panel to accomplish three things: to generate and stimulate a stronger evidence base for how changes in the agriculture and food systems can improve nutrition, to create and promote a new understanding amongst decision makers of the role and future potential of agricultural and food systems to achieve nutritional security, and in the context of today's presentation, the resilient supply of food and access to consumers, to drive change by catalyzing collaborative actions in agriculture and food systems that will improve diets and equitable nutrition outcomes for all, with special attention, as many people have said throughout this conference, on the nutritional needs of women and children. We'll be functioning for a period of 3 years. It's somewhat, the lifespan of the panel is somewhat linked to the fact that the UK hosted the Olympics last year, the year before, and that Brazil, one of our panel members, the Director General of FAO, and his country will be hosting it in 2016. So we're hoping in this 3-year period that we've been given to address these three goals: the evidence base, the new understanding, and to some extent driving change in this very short, very sort of enhanced period. And I have to say that having been here in Addis and at this conference for the last 2 days, I think in fact the discussions that we've had here will in fact contribute greatly to driving that kind of change that we're looking for. I would like to just make a brief introduction to sort of what we're going to talk about at this panel, and then I'm going to introduce a fantastic panel of experienced people who are going to talk from the basis of their research, from their corporate positions, and from their engagement both with analysts as well as practitioners on the ground. As we've said, we're going to focus on the area of farm gate to retail. A lot of people are looking at agricultural productivity and how changes in productivity can increase resilience. But we're also looking down the chain toward the retail sector, looking at adding resilience as well as value. I'm sure I look around here and I know a number of people have used the phrase value chains already in this conference. But the issue of value chains has often jumped from agriculture, more production, to more consumption. I wonder what happened to the people in the middle. That's exactly what we're going to be looking at. Who are those other players that are adding value and resilience in the chain? So just to remind, the ag supply chain has a linearity about it, moving from the farmer through the transport, storage, processing, and into the wholesale and retail sector. And I'm pleased to say that our representatives here will be able to touch firsthand at each of those segments, and then driving to the consumers, and that's all of you, so I think we can handle that part. Thanks. And looking at this middle and looking at how value and resilience are added, we're really going to focus principally on these issues of storage, transport, processing, and the wholesale retail sector. Yeah, next one. And come up with, at the end of this session, hopefully a better understanding of how we as a community, as we as individuals wearing our own individual institutional hats, are going to move toward a more efficient and more resilient middle segment of the value chain or the supply chain. There's a certain pejorative kind of sense associated with the word middleman. And I've in fact heard that used around the fringes of several conversations. Oh, the middlemen, they're just out there to make quick money, and they're out there to pay farmers as little as they can and to charge consumers as much as the market will bear. I think what we're going to do is we're going to see a different perspective of the middle in this section, in this session today. Looking at it from a consumer perspective, considering the question of diverse and healthy products, which go into making diverse and healthy diets. Looking at the question of year-round access, the reliability of supply, which is, as you all who know the FAO definition of food security will recall, is the fourth element of the definition of food security, predictability, reliability of food supply. Actually, you can't stand in front of my notes. And looking at the question of affordability from a consumer aspect. Because in fact, access, as several speakers have emphasized, is really a key part of reliability and sustainability. We're also going to look a little bit at convenience, which is a word that I have not yet heard mentioned at this conference, but which, if one looks at the literature on consumption and consumer choice and how consumers make those choices, convenience is an increasingly an important part of those choices. Fast foods, quick service foods, street foods are figuring much more heavily in dietary patterns these days, especially in busy urban households. Work that's been done by the African Center for Cities, which is located at the University of Cape Town, very much emphasizes how even in Southern Africa, the purchasers, the people who run household consumption patterns are in fact increasingly looking to prepared or semi-prepared food that they can purchase on their way home from work in order to fill out the family diet. And then another issue from the consumer perspective that we've heard about time and time again has to do with food safety. And again, the middle of the supply chain is in fact very much responsible, as we'll hear, for food safety. We're also going to take a look from the business perspective, and with that sort of opening, I'm going to introduce my panelists, because two of them come directly from the private sector, and Bart Minton, who is going to be our first speaker, has spent, 3 years? Working on studying how value chains are evolving in Asia, and the role that various private sector actors are playing in shaping those value chains and actually creating a revolution in the way that those supply chains transform agriculture production from the farm gate to the consumer. So Bart Minton is a senior fellow here at IFPRI, living here in Addis. We should probably also give him some thanks for providing some local support to organizing this conference. But I'm very, very happy that he's joining this panel. We will then turn to Eric Muraguri, who is sitting on his right, who is the director of Chicken Choice, as you will hear, a company which has been newly established in Kenya. And Eric, in previous conversations, has indicated that he has a long history with Kenchick, which those of you who have lived in Nairobi know as one of the major poultry producers and chicken vendors in Kenya. We'll then turn to Hans Yor, the global head of agriculture at Nestle, one of the world's, sort of larger international food companies. Unfortunately, Hans has to leave at 7:30 in order to catch his flight, so we're going to give him a little precedence in sort of responding to questions. So those of you who have questions after he's finished speaking, jot them down quickly because we're going to give him a chance to respond before the others. And then finally, last but not least, we're going to turn to Bonnie McClafferty, the Director of Agriculture and Nutrition at the Global Alliance for International Nutrition. Bonnie, as many of you know, used to work at IFPRI. But Bonnie, for me, has been a real inspiration in terms of thinking about how the entrepreneurs, the organizations, the corporations in the middle of the supply chain actually play both a positive and perhaps a negative role in terms of assuring consumer safe food, affordable, safe, reliable food supplies for consumers. So Bonnie will kind of be our wrap-up speaker, and we'll go right down the list. So let me open it up with Bart, talking about the quiet revolution in agri-food chains in Asia.